Hey everybody, welcome back to the Digital Imaging channel. I'm Will, and today we got another special video for you where I'm actually interviewing one of my colleagues at our Sunnyvale headquarters office. His name's Ku Vu, and he is our production manager, or another term for that is plant manager. And basically he is running every single one of the projects that we bring in and work on for our clients. He's a great guy to listen to. You learn a lot about kind of the nuts and bolts of production, executing projects, and getting them to completion. So I hope you enjoy the interview.
My name is Ku Vu, and I'm the production manager here at BMI Imaging Systems. Well, I was hired at BMI Imaging Systems to become a scanning operator. I worked there for 2 years and worked myself up to the production manager, gaining a lot of experience and just putting the time and repetition at scanning roles and learning how the business works from the ground up. I had a lot of conversations with Bill along the way. I worked with Jim a lot, very closely in the first couple years of my time here. It wasn't really a position. I kind of worked my way into that position because it wasn't like, hey, you're the production manager, now go do production manager stuff. It was kind of like, do this, and then pick up this along the way. Oh, you realized how long the schedules take. Let's see how well you do with bigger projects, and just kind of moved up from there. So it was just kind of like, hey, you want to try doing more stuff? And then Brad just kept offering me more stuff to do. Jim kept offering me more stuff to do, and I just, sure, why not? So during a month cycle, the production team, including the PMs, probably work about 100 to 140 projects in a month. That's just projects that are assigned to each PM. There are still reoccurring projects that just happen in the background. But yeah, roughly about 100 to 140. Well, active working jobs are about 100, but if you're talking about just actively build jobs, we probably work on somewhere between 30 to 50 jobs that will actually get produced in that month and invoices sent out to the customer, et cetera, et cetera. I would say about 70% of jobs are done within a month because typically jobs come in either in small batches or small increments that we can finish within a month time frame. There are very few, like I said, about 30% of jobs that are multi-month projects where they carry over into multiple months, multiple billing cycles. Those do happen from time to time, and we have trackers that keep track of counts that get completed over those months for those projects. Yeah. So we have a wide variety of jobs here at BMI. They can be as small as a one fiche project where a city or county will send us a fiche and they'll want us to digitize it, send them a PDF of the scanned images on a thumb drive or whatever. And then we can have jobs that scale as much to or pick up every month, where it's 50 to 60 boxes every month, and then work in production on that month and try to complete it within that 1 month billing cycle for the next month to be picked up. So yeah, it's wide ranging between material types and project lengths, but smaller projects are actually more difficult to deal with from a production standpoint, just because there's more complexity and variety involved in smaller projects, right? More hands have to touch it in order for it to go. From a production standpoint, we prefer high volume jobs where you can kind of stabilize the project or normalize the process flows. You know that the content will be pretty normal and standardized across the board because somebody has made a mass amount of the same content, and so usually it'll normalize over the time of the project. Where very small volumes of these projects usually take some artwork or some hand jamming or just a lot of manual labor that one person or one PM will have to put their effort into. Yes. So they require the same amount of time to set up big and small projects, but over the course of time, the bigger projects will start to normalize, and you'll see kind of patterns and things that will happen across the job that just makes it go smoothly across the board. Smaller projects will have more varied results and variables that may change the course of the project. My favorite type of projects is actually the more complex jobs. Customization of projects that will be editable by what the customer requires, right? So we make products and end results that are unique to whatever the customer requires. We have project managers, we have software developers that can write code that can make a process flow do whatever the customer requires us to do, and typically those are the ones that have high volume and very wide-ranging content. And one of the great things about that is you really get to see our ingenuity, our creativity in coming up with these process flows, the PMs kind of putting their input in how we should do things, being involved with our vendors, being involved with our software developer teams and writing code and how to handle, complex situations that come up along the way of the project. Those are actually the more fun projects, but they do require a little bit more labor and handling. So there's a variety of tools we use here at BMI. I mean, it could be as basic as using spreadsheets and CSV and text files just to format and create customer data or convert customer data or text into something that we can use. But it could be something as complex as building our own systems to track materials, track units, track production that our own software developers and engineers have made up themselves, have built from the ground up. So that's one of the unique things about BMI is our software developing team can make tools as needed for our PMs to make a project work. So if a new code is required, the PM will request a software developer to write the code. They write the code and we can test it and actually put it into production and execute it. So we have a system that we use now called Unity, which will track all projects that come in-house, track all boxes and materials that come through the system, and then once we get everything barcoded and entered into the system, it'll track the units that flow through the system. In a production flow, you'll see in charts and in our graphs that units move through the charts, and when they go to exception, they turn red. When they go through and complete a step, they'll turn green. And the goal is for every PM at the end of the month is to get all stacks from the start of the process flow all the way to the green. So essentially, it's just moving units along the system so that they get to the completion point. So the two most difficult things about production is setting expectations for the customer and for production, and communication. There's multiple stakeholders in production, typical production job. There's the customer, there's production, and then there's the vendors or the outside people that might be required in production or producing a job. That includes vendors, IT, software developers, etc. So it's just, from my experience, it's just getting all of those stakeholders all in the same room or all in the same chat room and understanding this is what we need to move forward, getting an agreeable timeline on what is required, knowing the expectations of the project, and then moving forward with it and executing it. So there's always a chance that the customer will ask for requests once we have the materials in-house. We use a system now called BRS, which will allow the customer to put in a request in the system, and then it'll ping all stakeholders here at production that will be required to pull the request. It asks that the customer provide as much information as they can. We will then use that information to go pull the request and then execute the request as needed, whether it's being scanned on the fiche scanner, roll scanner, or paper scanner. So for big projects where we're going to have the customer material for long periods of time, a customer concern is that they want to be able to access the materials and they want to be able to access it in a timely manner. So BRS allows us to track and manage those requests in the system. So when they put it in the system, it's already an itemized unit that allows us to track what is required of that request, and then it lets us move in through the process flow of whether it's been completed or in process, and then notifies the customer also when it's been completed. It all does this automated. The communicating of it is automated so that the users get notified as soon as something is done. So that eliminates a lot of the manual communication that we have to do on a normal request, which was before the BR system was implemented. So since I've started in 2012 as production manager, the technology is the greatest tool that we've had, right? Just technology in terms of the software developers putting out all these digital tools that allow us to organize our projects more neatly and just more efficiently. Because what we used to do was manage a project one at a time. A project manager would have to completely focus in on one process flow and just manage the units that go across that process flow one at a time. With Unity, with the hubs, the BMI hubs that are allowing us to manage multiple projects all at once, it's as simple as clicking a few buttons and you can run all processes in a job for all jobs that you're managing within 10 minutes. So that's allowed us to scale, how much projects we can do and how many units we could push through the process flow. And all it does now is require more computing power and not manpower. Where we used to have problems was we didn't have enough manpower, but we had all this computing power that was just sitting idle. I never really did any of those paper napkin projects, but I remember there was a lot of these art projects where they would bring to me and it's like, hey, can you make this out of this? And it's like, you want me to, yeah. Yeah, so one of the things I tell customers all the time is that you can expect a project typically to go in the shape of a bell curve. It'll slowly ramp up once we do milestones and get things kind of figured out. And then in the medium to, portion of it, it'll speed up really quickly. It'll go right to the top because we're going to produce a bunch as soon as the milestone's approved and we have a proof of concept. And then at the tail end of the project, it'll start to slow down again in terms of production numbers, just because you'll run into a lot of exceptions or constraints that will kind of naturally resolve as we go. And then towards the very end of the project, that's when, you know, the units go down to like 1 or 2 per day, just because you've already done the bulk of the work and now you're just resolving the whatever's final exceptions before you can finalize the project. The secret sauce to creating project or completing projects is setting expectations and having milestones that kind of will provide a good example of how the project's going to run, right? So the sampling that you get in the beginning will kind of help you understand what the project's going to be like, and then also let you set expectations with the customer and with yourself how the rest of the job is going to flow. Now, granted, there are times where projects, the milestones won't mirror exactly how the production will go, but you already have a baseline, you already have process flows and code that is written to handle some of those things, and now you're just ironing out anything else that hasn't been resolved yet. 99.9.
Excellent.
If I knew what I was getting myself into, I would have 100% taken the job, just because it's been more fun to learn all these things as you go than to have all the answers when when I was handed the keys, right? It's more fun to develop these relationships, develop these communications, and just having these trials and tribulations along the way, getting to where you are now, as opposed to just being handed all of it. So.
And that's a wrap. You got to hear Ku talk about production, the ups and downs, the trials and triumphs, and what it takes to successfully execute a digital conversion project. We hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.